counsellor, and then you rotate, so that's 60 minutes. The 5-minute transcript, are you doing that on just the entire element and any parts of your counselling observer in client interaction?
No, so what you do, Julie, when you're counsellor,
yes,
what I'd recommend you do is, if your other two people are happy, is record the session.
Yeah.
And then if you're counsellor, you just listen back to that and think, oh, I'd like to hear a bit of feedback on that little segment. So just type up the 5 minutes where you'd like feedback on, as like a script.
Sure, and as the counsellor.
Yeah, as the counsellor. And then email that to Ildiko, or however, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to be presented to us. Either you're going to email your tutor, or there'll be a central place for you to upload this.
Okay, I understand.
And that will serve two purposes. So A, we'll know you've done it. And B, then we can read that 5 minutes of transcript and give some sort of strengths-based feedback on what you've put there. Okay,
so 5 minutes. So generally, if you can record it and then you can listen back on your counselling, and then you give the transcript of 5 minutes, and then you'll read it and provide some feedback on the sentences. Okay, so you don't do your observer or your the other one. Yeah, observer.
No, it would be, so what we're trying to replicate is when we assess this live, last week we had heaps of little triads all around the room. So I scoot around the room and randomly listen about 3-4 minutes of each session. Okay. That's really the only grab that we can get. And so that random listening, I just give a bit of feedback on what I happen to hear. So the beauty of it doing it this way is that you choose which bit you want us to hear.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be the greatest bit or the worst bit, just a bit that you're curious about.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. And you're not going to be great, even if it's like dreadful or, whatever, that it all fell apart in your head. I'm sure it didn't. But, you go, oh my God, that was really bad bit. We're not going to mark you down because of that. We're just going to give you feedback on it, on how to maybe do things a bit differently or have some things to think about. Yeah, we felt that was the most equitable way of doing this.
Yeah, and you can choose which parts, which is nice, and to have that part to be reviewed, because you might be curious about, like, how would you improve on that for next time and what you can learn from it. And also hopefully be able to record so that you can reflect as well.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And then just type it out as a script.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. That is really helpful. And can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
So my groups together, like in terms of we're trying to organise a time for catching up, but we haven't had the tutorial and the topic, but is all the topic the same for the whole element, and you just do it whenever we want to now? Like, you just choose the issue and start doing the session? Do we have to wait for anything?
No, we don't give you the issue. So that what the client in your triad will when you're the client, Julie, you come up with something that's true for you, that's something that's niggling, something that's happening right now for you. We want you to pick something that's real, because then you'll organically feel the shift in the session. If you do a role play, it's really hard. If you're acting, it's hard to feel it. But if it's something real that's going on for you, then hopefully you'll get some, resolution, transformation through this process.
So you do it.
It's real.
Yeah, so we can do it just whenever.
Just whenever. I think Jane's put up the dates for when this needs to be submitted by.
Yes.
Give yourselves plenty of time so that you can, write your reflection, which is what you'll be marked on. You're not going to be marked on the session itself. That's just a hurdle assessment and quick feedback from us. What we will mark you on is your reflection. So I'd really encourage you to give yourselves as much time as possible to write that bit up.
Yeah.
Because that's what your grade will be.
And spend time planning that. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your...
No worries, Julie. You're welcome. Somebody else had a question. Was it Kiana?
I had
Oh, no, you can go, Cindy. It's fine.
it was just getting back to that transcript. I know that if we record a video, we get a link sent to our email. And I was thinking, rather than having to type out 5 minutes, is it okay if we timestamp that link and say that we want you to look at from this time to that?
Yeah, you could do that too. You could timestamp the link. We'd only have time to watch 5 minutes. You could watch the whole 60.
It's
I can't see there being a problem with that. Let me just check in with, because we're conscious that we're making this equitable. So I don't necessarily see a problem with that, but do let me check in with Jane. She might be insistent that it's just submitted one way. But let me check in.
Okay.
Hesitantly, yeah, great, do that.
I think, for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, good question there, Cindy. And good idea, that sounds great, yeah. Okay, I'm just okay, Kiana?
Yeah, I've got a few, Jackie, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted some help on the therapeutic process. On the class sheet, it says establishment, development, and ending. I'm trying to consolidate that with the structure in the lecture, like trying to go through what's establishment, development, and ending. I just couldn't quite figure it out.
Right. So in the lecture, I'll pull up the slides. Is this the lecture that I gave the other week?
Yeah.
Hold up. Oh, it's just slow. It's opening. Come on. I'll be able to share this screen with you all too.
Okay.
Oh, can you see my screen, Kiana?
No.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I go into, so I'm just going to share my screen now. Hopefully, you guys will all be able to see it. Okay, so this is the lecture that can you all see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, all right, let me go now. So the therapeutic process. So the first part where establishing, was it, in your language? Okay.
On the class sheet, it says establishment.
Yeah, so establishment would be creating the therapeutic frame.
Okay.
Developing the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah.
So joining with a client. What was your second? So you said establishing. What was the second thing you said?
Establishment, development, and ending phases.
Yeah, and then developing. So establishment and developing sort of intersect in joining. So that's where, when you join, you're kind of transitioning between the two.
Yeah.
And then as you're developing the therapeutic relationship, that's when you start to build empathy, positive regard, and genuineness, noticing if the therapeutic relationship is struggling. So it sort of transitions on this slide here.
And so in the assignment, do we have to address all of those dot points? Like, do we have to talk about empathy, positive regard?
No, I'm just going to check on. I just want to check the marking criteria. Hang on.
Yeah.
In the first question, we go into empathy and stuff. So I don't really know if we're readdressing it.
No, you're not readdressing empathy, positive regard, and genuineness, but you would talk about how you're maintaining the therapeutic relationship, how you're dealing with ruptures, how are you making sure things going along? How you set goals for instance?
Sorry, there's just some noise. I missed that.
Okay, I might just...
Coming from...
Sorry, Meta, I'm just going to mute you and Catherine. I'm not sure, there's background noise. Okay, I think everybody's muted now. All right, here, let me just see if there's anyone else. Mute Charlie, mute Sarah. Okay, I've muted everybody now. Yeah, so let me have a look at the assessment. I just want to remind myself of what this says.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, so the first one. Yeah, so the first one, reflection of your efforts to build a therapeutic relationship, where you talk about empathy, positive regard, and genuineness. The second one.
Sorry, on that note, do we have to talk about all three? Because empathy was big for me, and I sort of just wanted to use my words to really unpack that. Because it says and or genuineness. So I was just wondering if we could just focus on one.
If you want to, yes. Yeah. So you've got a big thing to talk about on empathy, for sure, just do that. Or you can do all three. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the second one, the position you adopted as counsellor. So that's how you make, for instance, or if you became more expert, you know. And then how you manage the therapeutic process. So this is really how you maintained overview of, the first one is doing, empathy, positive regard, and genuineness. So how you felt in your body, how you access empathy. Yeah. Whereas this third criteria with therapeutic process, you've got overview of yourself doing that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
So you're noticing when you start to get a little bit judgy, for example.
Okay.
And how you maintained the process in the midst of that. How you managed yourself and the client, if anything ruptured, how you managed joining, goaling, closings, that sort of thing.
Okay. And with the ending phase, that's not like ending as in completely. Is that just how you close the session?
Okay, so on my slides from the lecture, and this might be where it's a little bit confusing, on the lecture we were talking about ending the therapeutic relationship forever.
Yeah.
So when you go, okay, this is the client's feeling much better, they don't want to come back and see you again, or you're moving on in your job, you know, how to manage that and so that they don't feel abandoned by you.
Okay.
In this instance, though, when you're talking about your triads in reflection 1B, it's how you close the session.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's two different types of closing. There's ending, completely ending, goodbye, see you later.
Yeah.
And there's the ending the session, closing the session.
Okay. And with the therapeutic frame, the first one, that would be the establishing. I was just a bit confused with that because the creating an agreement, contract, because it wasn't going to be an ongoing thing, how do we sort of discuss that?
Yeah, okay, so you probably wouldn't need to discuss this for your 1B assessment because you're not negotiating an ongoing contract.
Yeah.
So this is, sorry, there go my crutches. So this is what one would do in real life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't need to say, I'm a counsellor with this and this experience. Here's my practice.
Yeah.
This is what we do together. Sign this form to say that you're, willing to. The lecture was more geared towards real life being a counsellor.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that negotiating slide, where does that, the negotiating, it's kind of in the middle of them. Yeah. Where does that tie into? Is that something
that's managing process. So how do you keep overview of the therapeutic alliance? Yeah.
Okay, so that is part of the therapeutic process, that slide?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. That helps.
Part of the therapy and part of the process as well. That you've got to sort of, during the process, you would have to. I mean, it's not just about empathy, positive regard, and genuineness. You've actually got to do some therapeutic work.
Yeah.
And management of the process is how do you get the client to buy into this alliance?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you'll just sit there being kind.
Yeah.
And they'll feel very hurt. And in some paradigms, that's all that's needed. In a humanistic paradigm, I think that's it.
Yeah.
But, maybe the client needs to do a bit of work in the session. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've noticed there's like some narrative stuff there about externalizing and...
Yeah. So we wrote that from a narrative paradigm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a few more, if that's okay.
Yeah, go.
The question, Jane sent an email out and it said that our essay should start with an introduction and end with a conclusion.
Yeah.
I'm just really tight for words.
Yes, it's a very tight word count.
Yeah.
Just a sentence or two.
Just a sentence or two? So
you don't need a paragraph. It would just be, this is a reflective essay on something we did live in class.
Okay, all right.
Just a tiny,
And then just my last question was, do we have to do because in 208, we had to link to the common factors when we were doing the inductive learning cycle.
Yeah.
Do we have to do that here? Is that part of the inductive learning cycle?
Common factors? No.
Okay.
So, but you do need to write as if you were so, for instance, reflection of your efforts to do empathy, positive regard, and or genuineness.
Yeah.
You would write that using an inductive learning cycle frame.
Okay.
So you would say what happened. So you'd say something like, at this point in the session, the client said this, and I said that, and which got me thinking that wasn't a particularly empathetic response.
Okay.
And so you'd write it as like what happened would be the experience.
Yeah.
And then you publish / process it. What did it get you thinking?
Yeah.
Then you generalize it to the wider literature and put reference in.
Yeah.
And then you'd say, what have you learned from that? What are you going to do differently in future? How are you going to use this in practice?
Okay, perfect. I was just reading 208 task sheet just to refresh my memory, and it was a bit more in depth. There were different things, and I was just wondering if that was part of the inductive learning cycle or not. But it sounds like common factors isn't usually part of it, like linking it back to it.
Well, common factors is like it was the topic. So common factors was like empathy, positive regard, and genuineness.
Yeah. Okay.
We could throw common factors into this, and it'd be criteria number 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Reflecting the way you experience common factors.
Yes. Okay.
Apply that based on the inductive learning cycle.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's all I've got.
You had great questions, Kiara. I think you answered heaps for everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
No worries at all. I don't know how to stop sharing my screen. What do I do? Oh, God. Maybe go to Zoom. Oh, God. Okay. I don't know how to stop sharing my screen. I'll work that out. Oh, here we go. Stop share. Yay! Hooray! All right. Who else had a question? Catherine Farm had a question. Let me see. Where are you, Catherine? There you are. I'll mute you. Oh.
I did. My question is specific to me though, because it was my.
That's okay. Are you happy to share your question in the group, or?
Yeah, it's just probably a bit silly, but it's maybe just semantics. Because the line you wrote was, I immediately noticed minimal non-verbal responses, and I can't decide if you're saying that I was showing minimal non-verbal, or it's hard for me to understand, like, that I wasn't showing non-verbal.
No, that you were showing.
But I was.
So when I wheeled up in my kind of mobility restricted way, before I fell off the chair, when I came up to you guys, that was what I noticed. I could see minimal responses straight away. That was
So
the first
is
thing
that
I
the
noticed.
micro non-verbal then? Is
Yes.
that okay? So you noticed micro non-verbal.
Yes.
You see how I was thinking like the minimal was that I was not showing very many
Oh, I see.
non-verbal responses, and I was like,
No. Micro. Okay, micro. Yeah.
man,
Micro. We interchanged that term.
yeah, okay. Yes, and I was thinking about you after. Were you okay after you fell?
Yeah, I was fine. I do that a bit. I fall downstairs.
Okay, yeah, that was all. I just wanted to double check that that was the critique.
Yes.
No.
So it was a good thing. I know
It's a good thing.
brilliant, minimal non-verbal responses. Yeah.
Okay, right. Thanks.
Micro skills.
Micro. That's why I was like, minimal or micro?
Oh, no, all good.
Okay,
Was
thank
that
you.
it, Catherine? Any more?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Okay. I might just I'm just going to unmute everybody. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat. Assignment. Okay, Catherine. All right, anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to go if that's all right.
Yes.
I also got 3 questions, sorry.
Oh, no.
So I received a feedback form from the Blackboard, the one we meant to use, and I've had a look at it. And that made me think, are we only after negative feedback or are we also after positive feedback in our trials?
Okay.
So when we do our little sessions,
Yeah.
do we want both negative and positive, or do we want negative?
So, we're looking for all feedback. I would very much encourage you to frame it in a strengths-based way. So even if you see something that you go, oh, that's terrible, how can you provide that feedback in a way that empowers and uplifts that other person? So with Catherine's example, I wouldn't ever write in that tone. I know this minimal verbal response, not in this context. So it's very intentional, that as well, because when you are counselling somebody, we do have to offer the clients feedback and maintain the therapeutic relationship at the same time. So how do you deliver that feedback so that they still feel honoured and loved and cared for in that relationship? And how do you offer that feedback so they don't feel judged and less than? And because we're our own worst critic. Yeah. So it's framing your feedback in a way that encourages them.
Because I'm thinking, like, I have to go back now and write my reflective essay based on this. And if somebody says to me, oh, you did a fantastic job because they're being really kind to me, I need to know the bad stuff.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not suggesting you cheerlead. But what I'm suggesting is, say, for example, you didn't feel heard at one point, then you could say, oh, I just noticed when I shared this and you said that, I felt inside a little bit judged, and I'm wondering if you could say it this way, it might make me feel a little bit better. That's sort of, so you can, of course, highlight the room for improvement. If you're going to do that, then suggest something that might work better.
And the other thing is it both the client and the observer that fill out the form?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all up we get 3 lots. One from the client, one from the observer, and one from you based on the recording or whichever way we end up doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And do we write this feedback down? So after we've done our little session, do we sit and write it down into that form, or is it a verbal thing?
Oh, yeah, you write it on the form.
Okay.
And so that you can give it to the other person to take away.
Okay.
And then they've got it when they write their reflection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't have to replicate the feedback in the reflection, and there might only be parts of it that you're drawn to, so you don't have to pull apart all of the feedback.
Okay.
It's just there for you to remind you about things that happened and stuff to reflect on.
Yeah. So I guess a good way of doing that would be straight after the session, each sit down with a piece of paper or the computer and just write down all our thoughts before we start talking about it, or?
Yes, yeah. So what happened live was the observer was writing their feedback as they were watching.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the session, the client would give themselves maybe 3 or 4 minutes to write it.
Yeah.
And then you verbally share it with one another. Yeah,
Great.
because it will, when you just read the written piece, like in Catherine's example, it can get the intention can be misinterpreted.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, cool. Anybody else?
I have a question, Jackie, as well, just with regards to that breakdown. So is it 10 minutes interview, 5 minutes to write things down for feedback, and then 5 minutes verbal?
It's 20-minute session.
20-minute interview session.
Yeah, 20-minute counselling session. And then give yourselves about 10 minutes to give feedback, which would include writing it down and sharing.
So 30 minutes per session?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay if it goes for less? Or you don't
try to
feel
get up
achieved
to
the
20
desired?
minutes. I mean, I wouldn't want you to be winding it up after 10. And if that does happen, then reflect on that and
Online.
notice that you couldn't maintain the session for longer than 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. You'll find it goes really quick, actually, 20 minutes. I do, yeah. Okay. Oh, hang on. Okay, Trish, my team members and I would like to complete 1A today. Is it okay if we send you the recording and timestamp each of our 5-minute segments? Okay, I'm going to check with Jane about that. That is a really good idea. However, just from an equity perspective, that needs to be, if we decide to go with that option, it needs to be globally offered. So let me check with Jane. She may say no. She might just decide that she wants written transcripts. So I'll have to get back to you on that, if that's all right, Trish.
Okay.
Did you want to say something, Trish?
Oh, no, I just said, okay, but if we do choose to do it, would the best way to be through like just the one email, 3 separate emails?
It depends on the size of the files. Oh, I see what you're saying, because there'll only be one recording.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, then just send one recording with the 3 names in the email and the timestamps for each person.
Okay.
Okay? But just, that isn't confirmed yet.
Okay.
I like your idea, however, we need to check.
Thank you.
All right. From Julie, that. For the generalisation, is it just one quote and no other references? Also, okay, so my understanding for the generalisation, you would have 3 references because you'd want to generalise criteria 1, criteria 2, and criteria 3. Okay. So yes, you would need to reference to the literature. Any tips on how to provide feedback?
Sorry, Jackie. I'll just speak regarding that. So there's empathy, positive regard, and genuineness.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to find a quote for each of those? No. So the quotes are relating to therapeutic relationship, client-centered focus, and therapeutic process.
Okay, so you would, so for instance, with empathy, positive regard, and genuineness, that's something, that you would, like Carl Rogers came up with that, for example.
Or Brene Brown or someone else.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So you just need one citation for that criteria. And then one citation for position you adopted as counsellor, and then one citation for the therapeutic process.
Okay, so
it could be a book or it could be a journal article, whatever fits with what you've said.
Okay, so one quotation for the empathy, positive regard, and genuineness.
Yeah.
And one for your counsellor's positioning.
Yeah.
And then one for therapeutic process.
Yes. Exactly.
Where is that stipulated in the criteria sheet or CRA or in the tutorial, so I can just recap on that?
Okay, so on the criteria sheet, if you look at the high distinction box for each of those criteria,
Yes.
it says full engagement with all aspects of the inductive learning cycle. So one of the aspects of the inductive learning cycle is generalizing.
Sorry, hold on. I'm just trying to find which one are we looking
I
at.
can share my screen. Hang on.
It's 1B.
I'll share my screen. And you can see.
So it's got criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that what we're looking at?
I'll show you. Okay.
Sorry.
Can you see my screen now?
Not all of it. I can.
If I move it, can you see it?
Not quite. So I've got
Can you
one
see?
quarter of the screen.
Can you see criteria high distinction?
No. Have you got multiple screens?
Yeah, but I'm only on one screen. Oh, hang on. Just let me move that across.
Can anyone else see the whole screen?
No, I can't see it either.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have multiple screens.
Oh,
There it is. There it is.
Across.
Okay, so that one.
Oh,
yeah, okay, I've got.
Meeting. Okay.
Yep, okay, I've found that.
Let me just stop sharing. Hang on. I'll try again.
Oh, got it. So self-reflection, that's journal. Counselling.
Hopefully that will share screen. Okay. Let's see if that's working now. Okay, can you see it now?
Not quite. That's all right. I'm going back to the Blackboard unit and then going in assessment. And then I'm guessing it's assessment 1B reflective essay dot.
Yes.
Okay, let me open that.
Yeah, and then if you go down to the bottom.
Okay. And then reflection of your efforts to build. Yeah. Okay. So full engagement, all aspects of the ILC.
Yes. And it says that for each criteria.
Okay. Has that been recently uploaded? Because
No, that's been there because I helped Anna write that before we started the.
okay. Sorry, I must have missed that one. Okay.
That's okay. I think Jane has edited parts of this, given that the dates have changed.
Yes.
But that marking criteria was set weeks ago.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll have a read of that further.
Yeah. So it doesn't specifically say you must give a reference. However, it does say full engagement with the inductive learning cycle for each criteria.
Yes, and part of that has the genuine generalizing.
Yes. Yes, and part of that has generalizing. So one would expect references.
Yeah, but I guess the last sentence reads highly relevant reference, not references, from beyond reading list.
Yeah.
To me, that reads one reference.
Yeah, per criteria.
Otherwise, it would say references.
Yeah. So it
Is that
says highly relevant reference for criteria 1.
Yeah.
And then it says highly relevant reference for criteria 2.
Yeah.
That's 2 references. And then the third one, highly relevant reference for criteria 3. So at least 3 references. 1 for each criteria.
Sure. And in that generalization,
Yeah.
you talk about that reference and what it means to you and relating to the ILC, but you don't use any other literature?
How do you mean?
So do you use any other literature relating to that, and especially peer-reviewed and scholarly?
You can do if you want to, but it's not necessary. And given that you've got such tight word count,
Sure.
yeah, just be mindful of that we don't need a whole literature review of empathy, for instance, but just sort of a reference that ties in nicely with what you've said.
Perfect.
So a Carl Rogers reference for empathy, positive regard, and genuineness, you know, it's a pretty stock standard reference.
Venture
I really thought it would be beyond reading list, so it wouldn't be in the high distinction category, but it would be a sound reference to give for those three things.
Okay, and those references don't need to be scholarly. That don't need. They can be from someone just a person.
Well, if you go to criteria, let me see, full adherence to APA, it does need to be scholarly, so it would need to be either a book, a peer-reviewed article.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be putting in a newspaper
Okay.
or some blog.
Sure.
I wouldn't be putting them in. This is an academic piece.
Okay.
In its reflection, it's still set in an academic context. So make sure that it's it's a book that's been edited and carefully assessed, or it's a peer-reviewed journal.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Or a textbook, for instance. You can cite a textbook.
And Jackie, I remember that Jane said in the lecture, I think, that she wanted a reference for each of the first one, like empathy, positive regard, and genuine.
Yeah.
But you think we can just use one for all three of them?
No. Well, you can use criteria 1 has empathy, positive regard, and genuineness. You need one reference for criteria 1, not 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then in criteria 2, you need another reference for position.
No, I just thought for the first part, for some reason, I remember her saying that she wanted a reference for each empathy, positive regard, and genuineness separately, if we were going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you've written. So if you've written a whole in-depth, well, you've only got 400 words, I guess, but if you've written a whole in-depth thing about empathy, then you'd need to generalize that. And if you'd also written a whole in-depth thing about positive regard from a separate sort of standpoint, then yes, you would need to have a second reference. But I doubt with such a tight word count you would have an opportunity to give that much depth that you would need 3 references for criteria 1.
Yeah.
I doubt it. Yeah.
Okay.
Give it a go. See, just see how you go. There's no hard and fast rules about this, but at least 3 references
Okay.
total for the whole 1,200 words. Yeah, at least 3.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And maybe you would find 2 for the first one, given that it's broken down into 3 aspects of the therapeutic relationship. Maybe you would get a couple of there. Yeah, just be mindful of your word count, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jackie, can I ask a question?
Of course you can, Julia. Go on.
With just that first part, it says the role of empathy, positive regard, and or genuineness.
Yeah.
Because of the word count,
Mm-hmm.
do you just, because it's in the full criteria, if you just discuss one, then are you going one element of that, like the genuineness, are you then going to miss out on the other areas?
No, I think we would like to see that you have understanding that the therapeutic relationship is broken into 3.
Right.
So you need to mention therapeutic relationship has these 3 elements, and then you can hone in on one of them.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
So you can you talk about the general top level of all the elements, and then you drill into one, because it's really, people have written like theses on each of these. I'm sure.
Exactly, I know. You've got like 400 words. My God, it's tricky.
Yeah, by the time you start, you'll be done.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyways. Okay. Let's stop that share. All right, any more questions? No? Okay, all right, well, I think the only outstanding thing was Sarah and Georgia need a third person for their trios. So I'll try and follow that up with Anna.
Sorry, Jackie, I've just put one in the chat. I just didn't want to interrupt, so I put a question in the chat, if that's all right.
Have a look. Something from Kiana. Just to clarify, with experiencing, do we talk about how we felt or just what happened? Okay, yeah, so with experiencing, it's what happened. Processing is how it made you feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, so how you felt was publishing. Yeah, that's right. Publishing stroke processing.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, one last question from me.
Yes.
The feedback, is there any, just struggling with that and how to present that to the counsellor, is there any tips that you can recommend or phrases that you've used? You can
Okay, so is this as an observer or as a client? Or
probably both.
Okay, let me get the form. And I am going to start showing my screen. My feedback form. It's doing it on screen too. Hang on. Sorry, I'm just trying to see how I get that across. Okay. Review, still working out this tab, share screen, my big form, share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So this is a client feedback form. So you do like there's a Likert scale.
Okay.
Yeah, where you circle the things.
Yeah, that narrows it down.
Narrow down. And here it says, what did you appreciate the most about your counsellor's style? What's one thing, if any, that you would have liked the counsellor to have noticed or done?
Okay.
So is that form on Blackboard?
Yes. It's under client feedback form.
Okay.
On under assessment.
Yep.
I've got it. I can send it.
Okay, you got it. No, I'll just have a look while we're doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I guess for Metta's question about negative feedback, that's how you would frame negative feedback, I guess. One thing that you'd like to have, that you would like your counsellor to have noticed or done.
Okay.
And
in
then,
terms of as observer.
Yes, I'm going to pull that one up now. So just let me stop share.
Sorry, I did see them the other day and haven't had a chance to read it yet.
No, it's all good. This is good, all good. So let me that can go. That can go across to here. Share screen. Observe feedback form. Share. Okay, so this is the observer feedback. So before you start the session, the counsellor is going to say to the observer, I would like feedback on how and it could be demonstrate empathy. So the counsellor has to think about what they want feedback on. And they need to give, I think, 3. So number 1 could be demonstrate empathy. Number 2, how did I manage the therapeutic process? Number 3 could be how I position myself as counsellor. I'm making this up. But whatever's true for you, whatever you want feedback on, the observer will look out for. Okay?
Sure.
Yeah, so give the counsellor an opportunity to sort of frame up what they want feedback on rather than you just watching any old thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you're giving them the feedback, I know there's a few phrases like when you said this, I felt like the client. But is there any other sort of?
So say for instance, I wanted feedback on how I demonstrate empathy. Then you'd want to give them concrete examples. So you could say, when the client shared that her dog died last week, I noticed that you said, oh, well, all dogs die at some point, right? And I'm just wondering if the client felt heard at that point.
Okay, so
although what you said is very true, that all dogs do die at some point, I'm wondering if the client felt held in their grief at that point.
So is it more of a triad conversation at that point?
Yes, yeah, you'd write that down because you'd notice it. You go, oh, she just shared that a dog died and dismissed the hurt. So you'd write it, you would write it down, but then you'd share it. Because when you speak it, you can put your own tone on it, and it softens the feedback, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Or it could be when you notice really great empathy. You could say, when the client shared a really troubling issue she was having with one of her flatmates, I heard you say this. That was such a beautiful empathic response. And I noticed that the client seemed to draw into the conversation even more at that point and open up more deeper layers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And drawing.
So look for them. I would really encourage you to look for them when they've done things well, because you want to kind of do more of that.
More the positive.
Yeah. Okay. Or you could even draw in some strengths that they used earlier in the session of how they could use those strengths in the part that got tricky. So if there was a tricky, clunky bit, you could say, how could you draw in the strengths of the flatmate empathic response? How would that look when the client shared about the dog dying? How could you have drawn that skill into that other aspect?
And looked at the benefits of using that again.
Yeah, they've got their own strengths in there, and to draw them in, sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, just check the chat. So I answered Kiara's question. Julie, what's this generalization? Feedback, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we talked about quotes. Publishing, we talked about that. Oh, Catherine, she's created a PYB356 Facebook group. If anybody wanted to join, share information on what's happening while we're undertaking online learning. Fantastic. Catherine, could you maybe send Anna that, and she can put out a Blackboard announcement?
Sure thing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's a great idea. Thank you for doing that. Can you invite the tutor? Oh, any of you want to.
Yeah, I think it's good for staff as well. I mean, so
yeah,
it's just
you don't have to.
Oh, okay, my computer just got rid of it.